Good morning, Efraim from Chanukah. We begin by thanking our sponsors, Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, and commemoration of the yahrzeits, Yitzchak, Laib, and Aharon, Rachel bas Baruch Avraham, Hinda bas Henech Efraim, and in honor of the Rav, all of this for the kehilla, the family should have an Achama, and the Neshama should all have an Aliyah. Thank you. Daf Yomi is sponsored today by Akiva Leah Weichselbaum, loving memory of their grandmother, Chana, Pastor Neftali. The family should have an Achama, and the Neshama should have an Aliyah. I think it's it. Yeah.
Somebody else?
Yeah, that was Akiva Leah Weichselbaum. Okay, good morning. We're going to begin. Today's daf is daf chaf. We are going to begin from daf Yutasam Beis. We left off yesterday. It's about 2, 4, 6, about 10 lines up. Tana Rabbanan. So today's Amud is mostly, primarily Agadata. Very fascinating stories, and I'm going to, whenever it comes to Agadata, there's always a number of different ways of understanding the Gemara, a number of different Pirushim. I'm going to stick, for the most part, with the Pirush of Rashi, Tosfos, and the Marsha. But there's obviously the Ben Yoyada, there's the Maral, there's all different understandings of all these stories in the Gemara, but we're going to stick mostly with the Marsha today. Tana Rabbanan, Pamachas, Alu Kol Yisrael, L'Ragel, L'Yerushalayim. Not l'ragel, l'regel. So, pamachas, one time, Olu kol Yisrael l'regel Yerushalayim. It's interesting, just the terminology of the Gemara, just to start. It says pamachas, it sounds like one time. Olu kol Yisrael l'regel Yerushalayim. So, the assumption is that it's referring to one specific time that they went up. But it also does say Olu kol Yisrael l'regel Yerushalayim. All of the Yidden went to be Olu regel in Yerushalayim. Now, it happens to be that the Marsha points out that this is talking about very close to the Churban. And it was possible, the Klal Yisrael got wind of that. And therefore, even people who previously were not Ol Regel, Aliyah L'Regel, going up to the Beis HaMikdash to bring the Karbanos, at the time of the Yom Tovim was something, it's a mitzvah min HaTorah. But people sometimes were a little bit lax in it, they didn't go. And here they recognized that it was already at the time, the Marsha points out, that it was already the Yad Nachri was Takifa, the Jews were no longer in control of the government. And they recognized that they were facing, the Churban was imminent. So this is Pamachas, one time, Alu Kol Yisrael. Everyone came. Everyone decided to come then. Now, V'loha Yolhem Mayim Lishtos. There was a drought. Put together these 2 points, the number one, all of Klal Yisrael came, they needed a tremendous amount of water, and there was a drought, there was no rain, so they simply just had nothing to drink. So Halach Nakdim ben Gurion, Nakdim ben Gurion was a very wealthy man. He went, Eitzel Adon Echad, he went to one important official. Amarlo, he said to him, Halveini, please lend for me, Shteim Esri Mayanos Mayin. Lend me 12 wells filled, 12 streams of water. The Oli Regalim, for the Oli Regalim. And he said to him, I will return to you exactly what I borrowed, 12 wells full of water. And there's a guarantee for that. In other words, if I can't give you the rain, can't give you the water, you have to recognize he's promising something which he can't really fulfill, because there's no rain. There's no rain, how is he going to return? I mean, the whole reason why he was borrowing all this water, because there wasn't any rain. So how is he promising he'll give him back the water? So he guaranteed it. He said, if I'm not going to give it to you, I will return to you 12 kikar kesef, 12 coins of silver. In other words, it was a tremendous amount of money that he promised him in exchange for the water. But Kavalos man, he made up a time that if it doesn't rain by that point in time, and if that point in time comes, he doesn't pay back the water, then he's going to have to pay the money. Kivin Shigiyah's man, once that time came, that just Marsha points out, why 12? Why did he ask for 12 Enos Mayim? So the simple understanding, the Marsha says, is because there's 12 Shvatim. So he was, but even that there's two understandings of what that means. Number one, there was 12 shvatim of people who came up. So he just needed, simply logistically, he needed to have 12 sources of water for the 12 shvatim that came up. The other understanding was that he knew he's going to need schusim for this. He knew that it's not going to be easy for him to get together all this water. So he needed the schus of the 12 shvatim. So therefore, built into the loan, he already said to him that he's borrowing the 12 streams of water, understanding that the schus of the shvatim will help that it will rain. Now, the time came and it didn't rain, so b'shachris shalachlo. In the morning, this Adon, the person who let the water, came right there in the morning. The Maharsha points out, why in the morning? Because they already had an argument. And this Adon, he was not Jewish, and he started the day from the morning. So he did not start the day from the night before. He came to him in the morning. And you can see it progresses this way. The Maharsha basically makes an interesting machlokas where according to this Adon, he held ad velo ad b'chlal. So he said until this time, so he said until that time. So he showed up that morning. So when he came to him, he said, no, you don't realize I'm Jewish. When I say ad, I mean including them. So ad v'ad b'chlal, until that day, and I'm including that day, so come back to me later. Okay, in other words, I still have a whole day. So Shagarli, he said to him, B'shachris shalachlo, he said to him, Shigarli omayim amos. Pay up. Either the water, get the rain here, or give me the money. Omos sheyesh li biyodcha, the money that you owe me. Shalachlo adayin yesh li zman kol hayom kulo. I still have the whole day. And that whole day, shalihu, it still belongs to me. But Sarayim came in the afternoon, Shalachlo, he sent him the same message. Shigarli omayim omos sheyesh li biyodcha. Either send me that water to pay me back, or give back the money that you owe me. Shalachlo, he sent it to him. He sent back a message, and he said, in other words, Nakdim ben Goyen sent back a message. And he said, Adayin yesh li shahos bayom, I still have some time left in the day. He wasn't done yet, but mincha, came time for mincha, shalachlo, again he sent him the same message, Shigarli omayim omos yesh li biyadcha, either pay up the water or return the money. And shalachlo, he said, Adayin yesh li shahos bayom, I still have some more time. In other words, Shkia, sunset, has not come yet. Ligleg, alav, oso adon. At this point in time, he started laughing. He started saying, listen, this is a big joke. Amar kol hashana kula lo yardu geshamim. All year, there was no rain. And this guy believes, v'achshav yardu geshamim, this guy realizes there has not been any rain all year. It's not like this is a new story. It's not like it rains once a week and he's just hoping today is going to be the day. It has not rained all year. This guy takes out a loan expecting it to rain by this date, and it's not raining. The day is practically over. And he's still pushing me off because he's hoping it's going to rain. Now, nichnas lebeis hamerchatz. This Adon, who lent him the money, went into the beis hamerchatz. Now, the Maharsha points out, going into the merchatz was not because you just simply needed a shower. But it was part of the strategy. You guys have no water. You borrowed water from me, and now you have to pay me back. But I still have plenty of water. As a matter of fact, in the middle of the conversation, I got to take a little break. I got to take a shower. I got to go use my surplus of water that I have here. But you guys go figure this out. While I go take a shower, either do me a favor, get all my wells filled up with water somehow, or get me the money. So it was part of the strategy of making fun of Nakdim ben Goyen. So nichnas the beis hamerchatz b'simcha. He walked into the beis hamerchatz full of joy. Ad sha'adon nichnas b'simchas beis hamerchatz. While the Adon was walking, in other words, this person who lent the water went into the bathhouse to go take a shower with simcha. Nakdiman nichnas lebeis hamikdash. Nakdiman went to the beis hamikdash. Kishu atzev. He was disappointed. What did he do? Nisatev. He wrapped himself up in his talis. V'amad b'tfila, and he stood there davening. And Amar lefanu Ribbana Shalom. He said, Ribbana Shalom Hashem, galoi v'yadua lefanecha. It is open and revealed before you. Shlo lechvod yasisi, v'lo lechvod beis abba asisi. What did I do this for? In other words, he stood before the Ribbana Shalom and he said, what did I do this for? Why did I take out this massive loan? Did I do it for headlines? I didn't do it for myself, for my family, for my father's family. I wasn't trying to make history. I didn't want to be written about in this Gemara, Maseches Taanis. I did this for one simple reason. El lechvodcha asisi. All the Yidden finally came to Eretz Yisrael to be Ola Regal, and then there's nothing to drink. What did I take out this loan for? I took this out for you. People came to be Ola Regal, I wanted them to have what to drink. Miyad, immediately Niskashu Shemayim Ba'avim, the entire heavens became filled with thick clouds. The Yardu Geshamim, and it rained. Ad Shenismalo Shtei Mesrei Mayonos Mayim, these 12 wells filled with water. But not only that, V'hosiru, there was more than he actually borrowed. So I just think it's worth pointing out over here the style of the tefillah. First of all, he put on his talis, which is tefillah l'ani kiyatov. Part of when a person finds himself desperate in a situation, the proper way of being mispaled is with tzitzis, with his talis on. But not only that, we see a strategy. If a person lives their life like this, ultimately it gives them a pischon pet to mispal. If you do things, and you don't do it simply for yourself. You don't do it because you're trying to make headlines. You don't do it simply because you want to have benefit. You do something for the right reason. And sometimes it doesn't work out. We see here from Nakdim Ben Gurion, he was able to say to the Rebbeinu Shalom, do me a favor. I'm here for you. I'm trying to do this for you. If indeed a person does something for the sake of the Rebbeinu Shalom, give them a pischon pet to say, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I'm trying to do this to help you. Can you help me out? Can you be there for me? And that's how his tefillah was answered. So now he had more water. He got back more water for this Adon than he had borrowed. So when this man came out of the shower, out of the Beis HaMerchatz, out of the bathing house, they both walked out of their respective places at the same time. When they met each other, Amar lo, Tainli Demei Mayim Yoser Sheish Li B'yodecha. Now, what did Nakdim Ben Gurion say to this guy? He said, by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but while you were in there taking your shower, your well's filled up, but if you'll notice, there's a lot more water in your well than we started with, so here's the bill. In other words, you were so concerned you wouldn't have enough water, here's the bill. You owe me money, as a matter of fact, you got more water. Maharsha points out over here also, he wasn't actually sending him a bill. But since he went through that harassment the whole day, every couple of minutes he's getting a message, pay up, pay up, pay up. And at the end of the day, just as his bill's becoming due, this Adon goes in to take a shower, starts scorning and making fun of him. So now he threw back a nice line to him and said, you know what, as a matter of fact, now I'm the one who's on top. So here's your bill. Amar lo, he said, Yodea ani, shlo hirish HaKadosh Baruch Hu Salamo ela b'shvilcha. So this person, this owner of the water, he's actually honest. And he said to him, I'm actually quite aware of the fact that it's not rained all year, and I said that to you earlier today. And I know that the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu shook up the whole world and made it rain was because of you. Ella, he said, you know what, practically speaking, adayin yesh li pischon peh alecha. I still have what to say to you. I'm still going to charge you the 12 kikar kesef, the 12 bundles of silver. Shekvar shaka chama, the sun already set. V'geshamim birshusi yardu. The rain came down during my domain. In other words, we started off this discussion this morning where I came to you and I said to you that you owe me the money because it's already that day. And you said you go by sunset. So you know what, technically, the day started yesterday at sunset and ends today at sunset. Now, according to you, when did it rain? After sunset. So thank you very much, and I know Kadosh Baruch Hu made it rain because of you. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to monetary issues, you have to prove. Hamotz mechaver olav araya. And he says to him, you know what, I'm being motzi money from you because I'm charging you the money. And you owe me the money because fact is, it did not rain on the day that it was supposed to rain. And he had nothing to say back to him because in truth, it rained after sunset. Chazar ben nichnas lebeis hamikdash. Nakdim ben Gurion went back to the Beis Hamikdash. Again, what did he do? Nis'atef, he wrapped himself up in his talis. The Amad betfila, he started being mispalel. He started davening. The Amar lefana Ribono Shalom. He said, Ribono Shalom, please, hoda sheyesh lecha ahuvim ba'olamecha. Show, make a very clear and open sign that the Jews are beloved to you. Show the rest of the world how much you love the Jewish people. Miyad nispazru ha'avim, the clouds moved away, they spread away, v'zarcha hachama, and the sun came out. So, in other words, a miracle of nature. It was after sunset. He went in, he was mispal, he davened to Hashem, he said, show the world how much you love the Jews. All of a sudden, what happens? The clouds move aside, and the sun comes out. So, the Maharsha points out that there's two things over here. Number one is Spazru Ha'avim, the clouds moved away. And number two, V'zarcha Hachama, and that the sun shined. Says the Maharsha that the Nispazru Ha'avim is not the miracle. It only became cloudy because HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it rain. Hashem made it rain, so it became cloudy. The miracle was V'zarcha Hachama, that after the clouds moved away, the sun was shining. It was already after sunset. The sun should not have been shining there anymore. That was the miracle, that the sun was still shining. But also Shah, at that point in time, Amar lo ha'adon, this person, the owner of the water, said, Ilulo niktar achama hayali piskon pe'alecha. The sun had not broken through, then it would have had what to say to you to charge you. She'otzi mimcha ma'osai. However, now, in other words, I really have nothing left to say. At a certain point in time, you have to just give in and say, you know something? You won. And that's what happened over here. Akiva ben Gurion ultimately prevailed. He borrowed the water, and he was mispal on behalf of Klal Yisrael that the water should be paid back. The water was paid back. Kadosh Baruch Hu turned over nature to show how much he loves the Jewish people. One of my Rebbeim, Yitzchak Berkowitz, from Eretz Yisrael, he says that he thinks if the Rambam was around now and writing the Yud Gimel Ikrim, writing the 13 principles of faith that a Jew has to believe in, he would include in there that a person has to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them. So many people are convinced that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really out to get them. And it's such a disastrous way of a person living their life, not recognizing how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves every single Jew and yearns and pines for their dveikus, to connect to him, to have that love. If people would recognize that, they would recognize how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them, they would live their lives so differently. Apparently that wasn't a challenge in the time of the Rambam. But here we see very clearly, what did he say? What was his tefillah? His tefillah was, Hoda sheyesh lecha ahuvim ba'olamecha. Show the world that there is a group of people, that there are Yidden here, that you love. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, of course. I mean, it's so easy. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to know all the time. I love you. And we sometimes get caught up in ourselves and we think, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I'm not a good enough person, I should have been better, I could have been better, this person did that to me, someone did this to me, ultimately I'm not a good person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't love me. And such a disastrous way of living our lives, of thinking that Hashem does not love us, and it causes us to mess up in so many other areas. If we only remembered HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for the Jewish people never ever goes away, and not just for the Jewish people as a whole, but for every single Yid, every single Yachid in the world, every single person, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them with a love which cannot be replaced, and ultimately it's unconditional. Tana, the Gemara says, we've learned, Lo Nakdim and Shemo, Ela Buni, Shemo, his name was Buni. However, V'lo Menikra Shemo Nakdimon, why was he called Nakdimon? Because the sun basically pierced through because of him. So his name was called Nakdima. All right, Tana Rabbanan. The Rabbanan have taught us that Shlosha Nikdima Lahem Chama. There are three people for whom the sun actually changed its course. It pierced through even at a time that it wasn't supposed to. Moshe, Yehoshua, and Nakdima ben Gurion. Moshe Rabbeinu, Yehoshua, and Nakdima ben Gurion. So Bishlam and Nakdima ben Gurion Gemara. That's the Gemara we just learned. In other words, we have this Besorah, we have this story about Nakdim ben Gurion. Where do we find that the sun changed its course for anybody else? Yoshua Nami, the Gemara says, it's very clear. Kruksiv, vayidom ha-shemesh, v'yareach amad. The Shemesh stood there, idly, and the moon waited to come out. So this is basically, very quickly, the story with the Givonim. They went to Milchama, and Yeshua did not want them to be fighting too late on Erev Shabbos, so they shouldn't be Michal Shabbos, and ultimately he suspended the sun from going down for 24 hours. So it's a Mefurish, it's a pasuk that tells us that the sun stayed out longer in order that it shouldn't be Shabbos, that everyone should be able to get back home in time. Now, Moshe Minolan, where do we have any pasuk in the Torah where it tells us that the sun changed its course for Moshe? And where it says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Asya Achel Achel. We're using the concept of a Gezerah Shava. Gezerah Shava, Rashi writes it very clearly here on Daf Chaf. Amar Aleph, Rashi is in the Dibur HaMaskil, the third line, and he starts at the end. There's a period, Shkein Derech HaKsuvim. This is the way of the Ksuvim. Lomad Sasum Min HaMeforish. We learn something which is hidden from someplace where it's open and explicit. Beremez, through a hint. Bedibur Doma Lechavero. If you have two parallel words, one of them is clearly written in the context of the Nes, and the other one is written someplace else, in certain places. This is a Gezerah Shava, and we have from the Yud Gimel Midos, Shnitna Lo Moshe Misinai, there are 13 different tools that are used. In other words, the Rambam writes very clearly, when the Torah was given, the Torah was not only given as the Torah, it was also given with an instruction manual in how to use it. There are 13 principles that are used to sometimes understand how to compare one word from the next. If you find a parallel word in one story to another story, you're able to carry over the details from one story to the other one. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Lazar, Asya Achel Achel. We learn from Achel Achel. Ksivhacha Achel Teis Pachtecha. It says in one place, Achel Teis Pachtecha, I will begin to place your fear. Uksiv Hasam Achel Gadlecha, I'll begin to make you big. And just like in the story of Yoshua, the sun suspended its time to set, so too by Moshe Rabbeinu that happened as well. Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar, Asya Teis. We actually use the word Teis from one place to the next. Ksiv Hacha Achel Teis Pachtecha, I'll begin to place your fear. Uksiv Hasam Biyom Teis Hashem Es Amori. It says, I will place. Hashem will place the Amori. So we learn the word taste from one to the next to tell us that the same details of the story happened by Moshe as details that happened by Yeshua. Therefore, that teaches us that the sun did not. That the Moshe Rabbeinu had the ability to hold the sun back. We learned it actually from the words in the pasuk, which says, "Asher yishmon shemecha v'rogsu v'chol mipanecha." They'll hear your name and they will ultimately fear and tremble before you. Emasai rogsu v'chol mipanecha b'shash nikdaloi chama v'moshe. When is it that everyone ultimately got scared? When was it that the fear of God literally fell upon people? When they saw that Moshe Rabbeinu had the ability to be able to suspend the sun from setting. In the Mishnah mentioned, V'chein ir shelo yardu alei geshamim. Similarly, a city where rain did not fall. And we mentioned yesterday when we learned this Mishnah that there's a specific fast that's initiated when there is one city from amongst a number of other cities that gets no rain. In other words, nature can't really explain it so well. It's not that there's really a drought. All the surrounding cities get rain, but one city does not get rain. So that's a clear indication that something is off. And under such circumstances, we institute a fast right away. Amr Yehuda, Amr Rab, V'shtein L'klala. Both of those cities, both the cities that got rain and the cities that did not get any rain, they are L'klala. In other words, it's not a good thing. And he goes on to explain. And the reason for that, Rashi writes, is because Osa sheyamtir aleh rov geshamim, the city that gets a lot of rain, shemiskalklines hatavua, it's going to ruin everything. In other words, if there's too much rain in one place and it doesn't spread out, there'll be too much rain. We always understand that everything in life works within moderation. It's good to have rain, but it's not good to have a flood. And therefore, both of these cities are not in good shape. Now the Gemara continues. The pasuk says after the Churban, the Yerushalayim became like a nida beineim. Nida, obviously referring to a woman who is tamei nida. She becomes asur l'bayla. When a woman becomes tamei nida, when she menstruates, so then the halacha she becomes tamei l'bayla. So there are restrictions between husband and wife. So that's what happened in Yerushalayim, which was the city where all the Yidden lived, there was, to a certain extent, a marriage between Klal Yisrael and Yerushalayim, became like a nida. They were forbidden from going there. Now, the Gemara says, Amar Yehuda Amarav Livracha. When we find these things, even in the darkest of moments, sometimes we could even find, even in the terminology that's used, that it's Livracha. So the fact that Yerushalayim became like a nida to Klal Yisrael, the fact that it was like a nida was a bracha. Kenida, it's exactly like a nida. Ma nida, just like a nida, yesh laheter. She's not usher forever. She doesn't become forbidden forever. Just wait the proper amount of time. She goes through the Torah process, she goes to the mikvah, and ultimately she becomes mutter. Ach Yerushalayim yesh takana. It's a sign that don't think that all hope is lost. It's like a nida. The Gemara Masechus Nida actually says the ma nida asura l'shiva. Why is it that a nida is asur for 7 days? So the Gemara explains life gets boring, and sometimes we need to rejuvenate things. And the fact of the matter is, when there's chiddush, when there is an ability to stop, take a little break, and then start over again, that gives excitement into a marriage. So this also could be a pshat in this Gemara, why it's the vracha. Sometimes when we get so accustomed to a certain lifestyle, we just don't appreciate it anymore. So, we're waiting way too long for this, for us to ultimately come back. But we have to realize that it will come back. And when it comes back, it will come back better than ever. The Maharsha actually writes that Kenida, the fact that it was Kenida, like a Nida, like Tumas Nida, is also a bracha, because we could have thought it would have meant Nov and Nod, like the bracha of Cain. He just was wandering, he was lost. So there are those who understood Kenida. Kenida meant Klal Yisrael is just going to be a wandering, lost all over the place. It says the Maharsha, no, it's like a Nida, where we know what happens to a certain extent. There's Isser, there is a period of time when things are forbidden, there is distance, but ultimately we know everything comes back at the end. The Gemara continues that the pasuk says Haisa ka'almana. We read this in Echa. Echa yashva badad ira basiyam Haisa ka'almana. It's like a widow. Amar of Yehuda Lavracha, that's also a bracha. Ka'almana of le amana mamish. Like an amana, Rashi says it's like an amana mechayim. In other words, this is talking about a woman whose husband continuously goes on business trips and leaves for a while. So to a certain extent, she's like an almana, because her husband's never around. She's like a widow, because her husband's not around. But she's not a real almana, because he comes back. So that's the same thing, it's like a woman whose husband went to the cities across the sea, he always is thinking about coming back to her. Pasuk also says, I have placed you like Nivzim, you are disgraced and low down. Amar of Yehuda Lavracha, that's also a bracha. Lo mukmi minan, lo reishe nari, velo gizi rifti. They were not appointed. In other words, they were considered as low down people, so they were not given appointments within society. What does this mean? They were not appointed as tax collectors or as policemen. The Maharsha says this also was a bracha. Why is that a bracha? Because nobody likes the tax collector. So it's true, they were never trusted to be the tax collector, but ultimately, perhaps some people wanted to be the tax collector. It comes along with authority. I'm sure you had a special uniform that you wore, and you had the authority to knock on someone's door and say, hey, pay up. The fact is, you don't want to be that guy. So it was a bracha in disguise that they never were appointed to be that person, because nobody ever liked that person. The pasuk continues, V'hika Hashem es Yisrael kasher yanud hakana min hamayim. Again, describing after the Chorban, the pasuk in Malachim says that the Hashem hit the Yidden like a reed in the water. What happens to a reed in the water? It sways back and forth. It's constantly floating back and forth. So the Gemara says, Amar Yehuda Amarav, the bracha. This too is also a bracha. Amar Shmuel Bar Nachmani says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yonasan, My diksiv ne'emanim pitzei ohev v'ne'asaros neshikos sonei. In other words, it's better to have the wounds of somebody who you love than the kiss of somebody that you hate. Which means, Tova klala, shekilel achya bekana, the curse of achya about a reed is better. Amar lam li Yisrael v'hikohash. Did I skip something? Yeah. Tova klala, shekilel achya shilaini. As Yisrael, the klala of achya shilaini. that he cursed the Jewish people is Yosemi bracha shebirchan bila marasha. It's better than the bracha of bila marasha. In other words, this is what it means. What it means, the ne'emana pitzei oev, a klala that comes from someone who you love is better than a kiss than from somebody who you hate. So the bracha of bila marasha, even though it's a bracha, is worth less than the klala of somebody who loves you. And the Gemara goes on to explain, Ach yashiloni killan bekana. He cursed them with the kana. And Amar lam li Yisrael, he said to the Yisrael, V'hika Hashem Yisrael kashayana dekana. Kadosh Baruch will hit you like a reed. Ma kana zeh, just like this kana. Zeh omei b'makomayim. V'gizo machlif. If you cut it, what happens to a reed? It grows back. V'sharashav merubim. It has very strong roots. It holds it in its place. What happens when there's strong winds that come to blow reeds? They blow back and forth. But they sway back and forth, but they stay there. Ultimately, they're rooted in their place. In other words, it blows with the wind. It's not a good thing to blow with the wind. But ultimately, if you're standing in one place and blowing with the wind, it's a good thing. Demamu aruchos. Even though if there's massive winds, they still stay in their place. Bilam Arasha, what did he do? Birchan be'erez. He gave Klal Yisrael the bracha of be'erez. He said, K'nechalam natayu keganos ali nahar ka'halim nata Hashem ka'arazim ali mayim. Give them the bracha that should be like an erez, like a cedar tree. But if you look at that, Shenemar ka'arazim ali mayim ma erez ze eini omeid b'makumayim. It doesn't stand by water. Va'ein gizo machlif. If you cut down a cedar tree, what happens? It's done. It's finished. It doesn't grow back. Va'ein shirashav merubim doesn't have a lot of roots. Afilu kol aruchos sheba'olam. No shos bo inim mazizos osum komo. It can't move. It stays exactly where it is. But kivin shenash ruach dromis, when a southern wind comes, very strong southern wind comes, okraso, the whole tree falls down. V'ovchaso upon it, and the whole thing falls on its face. V'lo od el shezacha kana litol hemenu kolmas. Not only that, a kana, a reed, was zocha to be used as a kolmas. We don't really do this. Usually they use now a notza, to use a feather, but there is a hiddur to use a reed to write a Sefer Torah. A reed was merited to be used to write a Sefer Torah, the Nevi'im and Ksuvim. Tanur Rabbanan. The third line from the bottom. This is a very famous story. A person should always be flexible. Should be soft like a reed. In other words, now that we mentioned the reed, we're going to talk about a reed a little bit. A person should always be soft and flexible like a reed. A person should be able to bend a little bit. Lo ye kasha ke'erez. A person should not be very difficult, unwavering person like a cedar tree. In other words, the Gemara seems to say there's two choices. Either you're a flexible person or you're a stubborn person. Choose to be a more flexible person. And what's the story behind this? Ma'isa Shaba, Rabbi Lazar ben Reb Shimon, mi Migdal Gador, mi Beis Rabbo. He came from a fenced-in tower from the place of his Rebbe. V'haya rochiv al chamar. He was sitting high up on his donkey. U'mitayel al sfas hanahar. And he was taking a walk at the edge of the river. V'samach simcha gedola. He was very happy. He was in a great mood. V'haysa dartoi gasa alav b'pnei shlama Torah harbe. He was feeling very good about himself because he had just learned a tremendous amount of Torah. Now that's a good thing for a person to feel good about himself for learning a tremendous amount of Torah. But a person has to get a hold of himself. And here we're going to see a terrible story. He bumped into a person, he met a person who was just very simply very ugly. He bumped into a person who was he looked terrible. He said, Shalom Alecha Rabbi. He said hello to him, he didn't answer him. So Amar Lo, Reika, you empty person. Kama Mechur Oso Ish. How ugly, how disgusting is this person. Shema Kol B'nei Irecha Muchu Arin Kamoska. Is everyone in your city so ugly like you? So Amar Lo, Ein Yodea. El Leich Ve'amar L'Uman Sha'asani Kama Mechur Klizeh Shasisa Kivin Shiyadav Atma Shachat Yar Ben Achamar Ben Shateach Lefanav. What happened? It's even hard to understand the story. Rav Elazar Reb Shimon said to him, "You're so ugly. I mean, everyone in your town look like this." And he responded to him, and he said to him, "I'm not sure if everyone looks like this, but if you have a problem with the way I look, why don't you go back to the person who made me and complain to the person who made me? In other words, I don't make myself look like this." Now, it happens to be that both Rashi and Tosfos mention that this person may have actually not been a real person. It was Eliyahu Hanavi disguised as a person, and it was a test. And the Mefarshim do try to understand, where was he coming from? What was he thinking? What's the pshat in this story that he said this to him? And they explained that he didn't mean necessarily his looks, but he saw his actions were inappropriate, and he was chastising him for his actions. But again, the simple lashon of the Gemara seems to indicate he lost himself for a minute. But once he responded to him, and he said, "Go back to my maker, and go complain to the one who made me that I'm so ugly," we see how quickly Yard min Achamar, he got off his donkey, Nishtateach lefanav, he bowed down before him. V'yamar lo, and he said, "Na'anesi lecha, I've pained you, I hurt you, I insulted you. Please mechali, forgive me." Amar lo, he said to him, "Inni mochel lecha, I'm just not ready to forgive you. Ad shetelech le'uman she'asani, until you go to the one who formed me like this, who made me this way, v'yamar lo, and say to that uman, kama mechur klizeh she'asisa." In other words, I don't feel comfortable being mochel you, forgiving you for what you said until you actually own up and go to the one who made me like this. Hayimetayel acharav ad she'giel le'iro. Rav Elazar Reb Shimon followed this person until he came to his city, and Yatsu b'nei iro lekraso. The entire city came out as this person was entering the city. And they were saying to him, "Shalom alecha Rabbi, Rabbi Umori, Shalom alecha Rabbi Mori Mori." They said, "Welcome to our Rebbe, to the person who we have fear, to Rabbi Umori." And Amar lahem, this person said to them, "Lemiatchem koron Rebbe, Rebbe, who are you saying this to?" Amrulo, they said to him, "Lezesh v'tayel achrach." We're saying it to Rav Elazar Reb Shimon. Why? Because he's a big Talmud Chacham, he's a big tzaddik, very famous person. Amar lahem, this person said to the people of the city, "Imzeh Rebbe, this person is your Rebbe. Our yirbu kamosa b'Yisrael." We should not have that many people like this in Klal Yisrael. We see such a tremendous lesson here in the story. You know, when a person represents a Rebbe, Talmud Chacham, and you say something, you make a mistake, the kehilla Hashem that comes from it, imagine this. They're saying we should not have any more of Rav Elazar Reb Shimon that comes along with you. So Amar Lahem Pneima, and they said, "Why not?" Amar Lahem Kach v'Kach Asoli. Told them the story. And Amar Lo Afal Pikein. They said, "You don't realize who this person is. We understand the story. It was terrible, but Afal Pikein, nevertheless, Mecholo, forgiven. She'adam Gada b'Torahu is a tremendous amount of Torah. Amar Lahem b'Shvilchem, for you, Hareni Mochalo, I will forgive him. Ubulvad Shlo Yehi Rogel Lasas Kain. He should not be accustomed to acting like this." Which, right away, this is a striking line. What do you mean Shlo Yehi Rogel Lasas Kain? The Ramah in Shulchan Aruch writes this a few times. The first one that comes to mind is the halachas of Atmana. There's a certain case where the Ramah says it's really technically mutter, but it's not a good idea to do this. You'll find yourself making mistakes. So what does it mean? That, I'll forgive him as long as he's not very accustomed to calling people ugly. He could do it every now and then, but he shouldn't be accustomed. So what does it mean? What is the simple understanding of So the Marsha writes that it means, of course, he should never ever call someone like this ever again. But he should make sure that he's not rugil, he should not accustomed to behaviors that led him to making this mistake. If he could protect his behaviors, ultimately he'll protect himself from making a mistake and calling someone and offending somebody. Miyad nichnas Rav Elazar Reb Shimon v'darash la'olam he adam rach k'kanav v'yikash ke'erez. He owned up to his mistake and he said a person should be flexible. Don't be so judgmental. You see somebody, take a couple minutes to evaluate the person and realize maybe the person doesn't look so good, but that's not the person's fault. Because of this, because of the the comparison to a kana, of a kana being flexible, that's why we use it to try to say for Torah. Tefillin and mezuzahs. We have 3 minutes, but we can do this. We said a city that has a plague or homes that are literally falling down. When it comes to homes that are falling down, it has to be that these are talking about strong homes, not weak ones, not ones that are ultimately going to fall. So the Gemara is redundant. The Gemara says they have to be strong ones that are not going to fall, but not ones that will fall. So hainu brios, hainu she'enu ru'uyos lipo. What is brios and she'enu ru'uyos lipo? What does it mean that they're strong and that they won't fall down? What's the redundancy for? And hainu ru'uyos, hainu ru'uyos lipo. What does it mean that they're weak and the redundancy of that they're ready to fall down? Well, the Gemara says this comes to include the naflu matzku bayu. It's a strong building, but they were built too tall. And therefore, if they're too tall, they can fall down. Inami dekaimi aguda denara. It's a very strong building, but it's built on wetlands. And if it's built on wetlands, ultimately this foundation can't hold it. It's going to fall in. Kiahi ashisa re'ua, like this weak wall, dehavi ben Narda, which was in the city of Narda. Below havi cholaf Rav Shmuel tuta. Rav and Shmuel never walked past this wall. Afagav dekaimi ba'asra kleisar shnin. Even though the wall stood tall for 13 years, they never wanted to walk under the wall because they felt like it was always going to collapse. Yom Achad, Ikla Rav Ada bar Ahava lahasa. Rav Ada bar Ahava came to visit there, and Amar Le Shmuel Larav Nesi Mar Nakif. They were walking, and what happened? Amar Le Shmuel Larav. Shmuel said to Rav, remember, we don't walk under this wall because it's going to fall down. It's dangerous. Amar Le Rav said to him, Lo tzrichna idna. Today we don't have to worry about it. Why? Dikar of Ada bar Ahava ba'dan. Ada bar Ahava is with us, and the nafish zechusei v'lo mistafina. He's a very special person. The wall will not fall on him. So as long as we're walking with Ada bar Ahava, we don't have to worry about it. The Gemara goes on to say, Rav Huna havli hahu chamra v'hu beisa re'iyah. He had wine stored in a very weak home. In other words, it was collapsing. It was about to collapse. Uboy lefnuye. He wanted to empty it out, but he was afraid to go in because if he goes in, the whole house collapsed. Be a disaster. So Aryeh Rav Ada bar Ahava, he decided that when he goes to empty out his wine from this house, what's a good idea? Bring Rav Ada bar Ahava there. Rav Ada bar Ahava is a person who has chasam. He will never find himself in a house that's going to collapse. So Mashke b'shmaita ad yapanya, he brought him into the house. He started talking to him and learning until he had a chance to empty out the whole house. Basta the nafak. As soon as they left, what do you think happened? Nafal base. So the whole house fell down. So Argish Rav Ada bar Ahava caught wind of this, and he said, "What's going on here?" Ikbid, he got upset. And Savarla, he had the Amar of Yanai, Olam al Yamad Adav Makom Sakana, Yomer Osim Lines. You don't stand in a Makom Sakana and say a nation is going to happen. So the Marsha writes over here, Rav Ada bar Ahava was upset because he understood he was put into a sakana, and he was relying on a nace that it won't fall down. But the Marsha says it wasn't for Rav Huna, it wasn't the problem because he knew that it wasn't a nace. When someone has such zechusim, the house is not going to fall down on them. So for him, he understood it wasn't the nace, and therefore he felt comfortable doing it. But ultimately, a person should not stand in the makom sakana v'yomer osin li nace, a miracle will happen. Shema ein osin lo nace. Maybe a nace won't happen. Vim tintzulomar osin lo nace. Maybe a nace will happen. Menakin lo mizichu yosav. We take away from his merits. In other words, he ultimately is using up his credit. Why put yourself in a situation where you have to use up all your zechusim? Amar Rav Chanan, my crow, what's the pasuk that backs us up? T'chsiv, katanti mikol chasadim mikol emes. Yaakov Avinu said this, I'm going to lose all my chesed, all my emes. Mayavi uvda, Rav Ada bar Ahava. What's the story of Rav Ada bar Ahava? Why was he so special? Kihad itmar shol talmidav. Rav Ada bar Ahava, v'maha arachta yamim. Why were you zocha to longevity, to long life? Amar lo, miyamai, from all my days. Lo kpadati b'sof beisi, he never got upset in my house. Lo tza'adati b'fnei gadol, misha gadol, and I never walked in front of someone who was bigger than me. Lo hirharti b'mevoyas atnofes, I never thought and learned in Torah, I never thought of Torah in dirty places. Lo halachti dalet amos, lo Torah, lo tefillin, I made sure not to walk ever Dalet Amos, 4 Amos, without either thinking about Torah and making sure that I'm wearing my tefillin. Lo yoshanti b'beis hamedrash, I never fell asleep in the beis medrash. Lo shinas keva, lo shinas Aryeh, I never went to sleep during the Rav's drasha. In other words, he was always stayed up inside the beis medrash. Lo sasdi b'takalas chavera, I never rejoiced when my friend ultimately stumbled. V'lo karasu l'chaveri b'hachinas, I never called somebody by a nickname. V'amri lo b'chanichaso, he never called someone not only by a nickname, but even by a nickname that his whole family used. Amalei Rav Rafam bar Papa. Just do one more line to finish up. Amalei Rav Rafam bar Papa. Rav said to Rafam bar Papa, Leimalon mar mihani mili malyasa to have the Avad Rav Huna. Tell us something special about Rav Huna. Amar Lei said to him, Biyankusei lo dechirna. From when he was young, I don't remember. But when he was old, dechirna. I actually do remember that. To call Yoma de'eva, any cloudy day, have he mafkin le beguharka dedava, he would go out in a gold wagon. The sire lo lekula masa, he would travel around the whole city. B'chol ashisa dehevi re'iasa, any wall that was weak, heavy sasarla. He would knock it down. Because it was dangerous, it would fall down. If it was possible for the owner of the wall, banila, he would rebuild it. Ilo efshar, if the owner of the wall could not afford to rebuild it, banila ihu midite. He would build it back for himself. So Mirza Hashem, tomorrow morning, we'll start with the story of V'chol Panya Demali Shabta. There was a story about Rav Huna, he would do every single Erev Shabbos, a beautiful story. We'll continue with that in Mirza Hashem tomorrow morning. Very